Welcome to Hungarian Horizon, a podcast about Hungary, its people, and their stories. My name is Balázs Frei.
And I'm Bálint.
Here with us today is Esther Horvath, an internationally renowned photographer who won first prize in the environment category of the World Press Photo Awards with her picture entitled Polar Bear and Her Cub. Her pictures have been published by the likes of the New York Times, Time Magazine, and National Geographic. She's currently lending her skills to documenting polar research. It's great to have you.
It's very nice to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
It's great to have you. I understand you started taking photos quite late after finishing college. What made you fall in love with photography?
Originally, I studied, I'm an economist, and I studied in Hungary, in Sopron. But before going on that path, my childhood dream, and when I was young, my dream was to become a book illustrator. And I always imagined that I'm going to, for a long time, I had this double life of working in a corporation, working in business, and then doing also my photography. And I lived this double agent life where I worked full-time in business, fully dedicated to that. I got home, I switched, and I was fully into photography on my weekends, on all my free time, and it took time. And some years later, after I got my first camera, I moved to New York to study at the International Center of Photography, because I was thinking, I knew what I want, but I was in a situation having a corporate job, which I actually liked, and also having this dream to becoming a photographer. I knew I need to make a bigger step, and that was New York. So I gave up everything in Vienna, and with 2 luggages, I moved to New York City with 2 luggages and an address in my hand, and I studied at the International Center of Photography.
Wow, that's very brave. And how does one go from art school in New York to documenting polar expeditions?
So in New York, I studied documentary photography and photojournalism. And already before I got to the school, I knew that I want to document a group of people who are inspirational for us. And I wanted to create for the audience a positive feeling and maybe also a motivation, inspiration, that to see something, beauty in the world, beauty in other people. When I moved to New York, I documented the New York City Fire Department, and not only the New York City Fire Department, but one of their very special units, and it was the Special Operation Command. So I immediately started to work with a group of people, and that story was published by the New York Times at the end of the school year. And right after, I was thinking that what is the next story I want to work on, what is my next project. And then I started to work with sea turtle conservation, and it's here I also started to work, I focused on the work and life of people who work with endangered sea turtles. And when I had these 2 projects finished, I went to a portfolio review where I met Audubon magazine, and 3 weeks later, the director of photography of Audubon magazine, Sabine Meyer, sent me an email with an assignment to the Arctic Ocean. It was 2015. The assignment was to be on US Coast Guard icebreaker Healy, and I spent 2 weeks with researchers, with scientists, researching the polar region and researching the Arctic Ocean. And why I was on this expedition, and during this expedition, I felt in love with the Arctic Ocean so deeply that I decided that I want to dedicate my photography to the polar regions, and I knew I wanted to work with scientists together to raise awareness together. So this decision to work in the Arctic Ocean and work with the Arctic started with this assignment.
And how many expeditions have you taken part in so far?
Actually, I just returned also a month ago from another expedition, and that was my 13th polar expedition.
Oh, wow, that's a lot. So you're trying to communicate about climate change, and going to the Arctic, what is it that can visually communicate to a lot of people the effects of climate change on our planet, on our ecosystems, and eventually on ourselves?
My angle is that, as I mentioned, I work with scientists, and I want to talk about climate change through their scientific work. We can talk about climate change because there are long-term observations by scientists for 10, 20, 30, 40 years or even longer, and meaning that they dedicate their scientific research to a long period doing the same research. And this is what I'm interested for, to show these long-term observations, to show this long-term work, and based on that work we know the facts. So my point of view, my angle and my focus is always on the human, always on this group of people. I just want to say an example that Svalbard of Norway is the hotspot of global warming. And we know this because from the beginning of the 90s, Alfred Wegener Institute started to conduct atmospheric research, meaning beginning from the 90s, every single day, also today at lunchtime at 12 local time, they release a weather balloon every single day, also on the weekends, also on holidays, every single day. And because they do this work, we know that Svalbard is the epicenter of global warming, where the winter average temperature increased by 6 to 8 Celsius. I'm fascinated by this dedicated work, that there are a group of scientists who do one specific research every single day.
Wow, yeah, it is indeed amazing. I was wondering if you have like a favorite photo of yours that you have taken. If yes, can you explain a bit on that?
Maybe exactly what I was just talking about. It's one single image which I took in 2019 at my very first expedition to this science place, to this science village, which shows this balloon release which happens every single day. And this picture became also photo of the year of the New York Times in 2019, and it was also the cover of the New York Times on one day and in that year. And for me, that is a one single image where I can talk about the scientific work, the dedication, and also the results.
Tell us about this photo that won the World Press Photo Awards in the environment category.
Before I went for Mosaic expedition, I imagined that I wanted to have a picture of a polar bear close to a scientific installation. I wanted to have these layers showing we are in the Arctic Ocean, in the Central Arctic Ocean. We are in a land of polar bears where scientists conduct climate research to understand the changes of their land. But of course, you never know. It's wildlife, and you don't know if that happens or not. I'm not a wildlife photographer. I'm not going out searching for animals. When I see an animal, I just love to look at it, and I always have to remind myself, like, oh yeah, it's important that I also take a picture. But I'm a person, and I'm a human photographer. It was after dinner time. I was out with two cameras on the ship when it happened, that polar bear mom and her cub came very close to the boat, and they were extremely curious, sniffing around. They did not destroy anything. They were just like extremely curious. What is this smelly, good smelling thing here? And so that's when this picture happened. And I remember when I took this image, I knew that, and I felt that this picture will have an importance. And because I never seen anything like that. I know a lot of polar bear pictures, but always taken in the light, in the daylight, and always just like a portrait of a polar bear, but never with this human interaction.
And what kind of new projects are you planning?
Me personally, I never experienced any disadvantages or advantages being a female participant. But what I realize and what I see is that majority of the times there are less female scientists. And I just decided that I had a project idea for a while that I wanted to highlight the work of female scientists, because they do an extremely important work in polar science as well. And my new project focuses only on female scientists. or female expedition participants. It's not only scientists, it can be also a polar bear guard, a cook, a nurse, anyone who works in the Arctic and support Arctic science. And it's a portrait series of done in a very specific way. I photograph in the darkness. I use artificial light, and it's a portrait of the person in a place which represents her, either her research or the field where she works, and also or using or having an instrument around her which represents her work. And each photograph goes with a text which talks about her, who she is, what she does.
And what is the aim of this project? Do you want to share their stories, or do you want to encourage other women out there to take part in polar science?
It is both. One, I want to show who they are, and I want to show their personal stories, and I also want to show an inspiration for young women, for children, for young women, but generally for women also, that everything is possible if you want to reach a goal and if you want to go on a path. I want that girls grow up, that they can be anyone. They can be that person on that expedition if that's what they want.
It's wonderful.
That's very inspiring. Thank you very much for being here with us and for talking to us and telling us your story. It was wonderfully interesting. And good luck with all of your future endeavors. I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot more of your work in the future.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Please like and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that bell icon.